My man! Welcome to the show. How are you? Really excited as a parent and as a person of color to have our guest today. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey guys, what's up? It's Irfan. This is the SunnySide Up podcast where I get to interview people that I respect and admire. They're usually CEOs, business owners, or people that are doing interesting things. Today, I've got my friend Tariq Najee-Ullah of Patent Insider. He is the founder, CEO, and owner. And there are several elements, Tariq, that I want to cover. You've got a very unique backstory. You're doing a lot of interesting things. I don't want to steal your thunder. So if you can kind of introduce yourself and give a layman's view or definition of what Patent Insider is and how you got into this, it would be a great place to start. And welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Irfan. Thank you for that introduction. So my name is Tariq. I am the owner of Patent Insider from Atlanta, Georgia, originally based out of Baltimore, Maryland today. And when it comes to, let's say, how did I get started? I mean, this really goes back to like when we're young, curious kids. I love taking things apart, from Legos, Lincoln Logs, to every kind of toy. I was a tinkerer. And so always curious, always into science. Parents were techies and Trekkies. So Star Trek, Star Wars, all things sci-fi. I've seen Star Trek: The Next Generation, the original Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, everything. That was our household. So one of my favorite characters on that show, The Next Generation, was Geordi, the engineer. And I always liked trying to figure out things with science. I think another thing as a kid, I was really into comic books, really big on Marvel. DC, Batman was my favorite DC character. But if you notice, like, all of the superheroes were, they're business owners, like, Tony Stark, Iron Man, or Batman. Business owners, but also like scientific geniuses. They're engineers or tinkerers. They were solving problems, even Spider-Man, with their mind. He wasn't much of a business guy, but Peter Parker, everyone was a brilliant scientist. Even the villains, they were like, they could draw like some kind of mystical potion or antidote. Even the Joker could like do like, potions and stuff like that, chemicals. So that was part of like my DNA as a kid. So as I grew up good in math and science, I started looking at technology and science as ways to solve problems. So that's what really, let's talk about where I got started. That's the inception of how I got started.
So a couple things. I'm a natural sociologist. I love understanding society. Part of that is race, culture, gender. Star Trek only got like one Black person on it.
Right. I think Star Trek was popular for that. If you remember the original show by Gene Roddenberry, he was making a statement. Back then, it was to see anyone that wasn't, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, WASP on television pretty much was unheard of. So right. He had a Lieutenant Uhura, which was the comms woman on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. And she had that position, and it was a very powerful symbol for the Black community. In fact, she was going to quit, but she actually got a call from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talking about how her presence on that show was such a powerful figure. And really? So that had a lot of currency. And a lot of times in science fiction, you did have Black characters. Like I said, in the Star Trek Next Generation, the main character that you had in engineering was Geordi, who was played by LeVar Burton. Who was African-American. So there weren't many African-American characters, but you had also a diversity of characters, different creatures. So there was an opportunity to have that diversity. So I think that's why it was a hit in the Black community.
Got it. LeVar Burton, interestingly, I grew up watching him on Reading Rainbow. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Me too.
Great guy. I mean, obviously I don't know him, but I feel like he did roles that always served as a role model for kids. So here you are, you're reading Marvel, you're reading about Iron Man, and you made the connection between these things that you had a natural interest in, Star Trek and other things, and you began to discern and notice that some of the folks that you liked the most, that you identified with, were the folks that were science and technology and analytical, reasoning-oriented individuals. So what did you do then? Where you began a natural interest in these fields and subjects?
So my mom was a math professor at Georgetown University, so I was always in STEM and math. I was kind of like I said, that tinkering became solving problems. So those were my best subjects in school. And this is I like to read. That was also, good subjects. So that offered me opportunities. I learned computer science, programming, all these things at an early age. And I think what really got me on the path of, talk about intellectual property and patents, I started seeing science and technology in real ways. My uncle worked on a Hubble Space Telescope. He's an engineer, and he worked, I think it's Forward Aerospace at the NASA contract. And so when I went to visit, my grandmother, and we went out, I saw them building the Hubble Space Telescope. And that was a big impression for me. I was like, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm sold. And so that's what started on the path. I went to school for engineering at Morehouse College and Georgia Tech. Math, electrical engineering, those were my majors. And during that time, I got to work at NASA. So my summers, I got summer internships to work at NASA Ames Research Center, NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. And those honed my experiences. I got to meet many engineers, with scientists, rocket scientists that were using science and technology to answer their scientific questions, to continue that adventure and curiosity. So I began to see science and technology as a way to continue that curiosity, that sense of adventure that I had as a kid that was sparked in those comic books and those sci-fi stories. And so that having those experiences, I made a decision that this was going to be what my interest was. But what really got me into patents is one summer. So I had 4 NASA internships, 3 of maybe 5, I think 4. 3 of them were at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, which is in Pasadena. That's where, all the rockets are made, basically. And so a lot of the lunar missions, like the Mars rover, all those things came out of JPL. And so one of the Morehouse alumni was the patent attorney for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. His name was Paul Ware. And he, it's rare, but he was an African-American patent attorney for the entire lab. And he's an older gentleman, and he had an amazing story. He had worked with Howard Hughes, worked at the Hughes lab out in California. He just had an amazing story, like being a laborer, having graduated and being a laborer, going to technical school and then getting a law degree, working at Caltech, all these different things. Just very amazing story. He told me about patents. He told me about patent law, and he would invite all of our Morehouse guys that were there working to talk to us about the importance of intellectual property. Now, I must be honest, my eyes glazed over when we started looking at patents, because I was like, who wants to read those? And it's like 100 pages of boring stuff. But the idea, the concept, more so his story, and how I was able to leverage that curiosity in science and technology, solving problems, the engineering background, the skills, the acumen into actually being a evaluator of innovation and ideas, that appealed to me. So that part of the story got me. And I was always interested in intellectual property from, that conversation and those many conversations. You say, every Friday, come by and I'll talk to you, tell you my story. And that was very influential, actually, for me. I don't think anybody else that met with him got into patent law, but I was one that did.
Got it. So you go to Morehouse, you get your degree in electrical engineering and math. And then from there, did you further your education?
So initially, no. I did do some study abroad work after school. I think 9/11 happened around the time I graduated. So a lot of the job offers were kind of fickle. And so I took that time to what kids nowadays call a gap year. I went overseas, I did some study abroad. I did some cultural enrichment. I learned foreign language, traveled to a lot of countries. And so that was where I kind of furthered my education in that regard. When I came back, eventually started working at the patent office. So one of my first jobs when I got back working as a patent examiner for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Okay, got it. I'm going to change gears a little bit. Your name, Tariq Najee-Ullah, that's a Muslim name. I'm of the Muslim faith as well. Were you a revert to Islam? Were you born Muslim? Not that it matters, but it's always interesting to find out people's background on a personal level as well.
So actually, I was born into the faith. My parents were part of the cultural movement, social reform movement, the Nation of Islam with Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. They came into that experience while they were in college. And shortly thereafter, the son of Elijah Muhammad transitioned that community into what we consider mainstream Islam with the Islamic world. So I grew up in that community. And so, like I said, also, being a part of that community, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurship was very much of a big part of that community. And so I'm birthed out of that experience as well. And even going back, my history, going back on both of my parents' sides, going back to the time of enslavement, our people were preachers, ministers, really active in the community, innovators, business owners. So a lot of that is in my DNA, so to speak.
That is absolutely amazing. I would love to meet your parents. So are you full-time in Baltimore? Are you full-time in Atlanta or where are you?
So our company is based out of Baltimore. We're actually in the process right now of opening an Atlanta office. So in 2024, we'll have an Atlanta office while maintaining our Baltimore location. We also have a location in Washington, D.C., which is Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. That's where we started, actually. Back in 2017, I started our company in Silver Spring and then moved to Baltimore during COVID. And then we're going to open an additional location in Atlanta this year.
Okay, so for let's get into what your day-to-day looks like to a person off the street. Explain to me what you do in the most simple terms.
I would say, in the most simplest terms, I protect your most valuable asset so you don't get robbed or have your assets stolen, misused, appropriated, and you can't do anything about it. It's like insurance for your business. What do I mean? Your biggest asset is your intellectual property. And I guess a lot of people don't think of it like that, but when we think of every business, it's powered by an idea. The best example I like to give for this is Google. So Google was started by Sergey Brin and Larry Page. And so they were students, as graduate students at Stanford University, one getting, a master's degree in data science, the other one looking to get a PhD in data analytics. But they were both, they were put together by researchers, not necessarily by, they weren't friends at first, but they were doing research that was complementary. So Larry Page had an idea of his data was to rank the traffic or the pages on the internet. He had this thing called PageRank that he was developing an algorithm.
That's right.
But he didn't necessarily know what to do with the data, how to use it. And so Sergey's thing was data analytics, data science, and he was good at categorizing, cataloging that data. They weren't doing the same thing, but they saw a marriage. And so they're PhD students. PhD students go to school, you sign an agreement that whatever ideas you come up with are property of the university. So this is why I say IP is so important. If Sergey and Larry and Stanford University, they didn't understand the value of IP, we would never have seen Google or Android or Alphabet Inc. It wouldn't exist. What do I mean? They, as part of their research project, they put together, they were allowed to run their tests of their software on Stanford servers. They started getting lots of traffic, huge traffic. So much traffic, I said, you gotta do something with this. We can't continue to host this. So they negotiated out of their agreement. They said, okay, look, we think we have something here. We want to suspend our research. We don't want to continue with the PhD program. Let's cut a deal. Let's say $50,000, you give us our rights. Stanford said, well, not so fast. $50,000, we'll give you your IP rights, but we're going to own stock. We're going to put a clause, if in the public, you hit these markers, then it converts to this much stock for us, this much. And so they negotiated an agreement that now, I think last I checked, they're 100 billion a piece.
Gosh.
Some ridiculous amount. And Stanford exited that agreement, I want to say within the last 10 years with a very healthy exit. But they invested in Alphabet Inc. So what I'm saying is that the idea that powered Google was an idea by students. They put that into a patent. They put it into a product. And they were able to leverage their idea, test it in a controlled environment, and turn that into multi-billions of dollars, create opportunities and ecosystems for all of us. Their most powerful asset was not the software. It wasn't the algorithm. It was the initial idea to solve a problem. And because they valued that more than their immediate, I guess, situation as students, they were able to see the value that transcended that. So what I do, I'm the one that comes in and says, okay, let's evaluate your ideas. Let's see where they are, and let's see what the potential can be, and then what strategies should we put in place to protect those. So that's I know it's I gave you a short answer and a long answer with the story, but I hope that, does that make sense?
It absolutely does make sense. You know what's really interesting, and I'll just share with you my experience. So here in Chicago, there are a number of incubators, and it's sort of like this miniature little tech scene that's going on in Chicago. You've got a number of companies of various degrees who've gotten some notoriety that started in Chicago. And so I feel like Chicago as a city, sometimes it feels like it's got some tech street cred. Now, take that information and set it aside. I'll have young entrepreneurs reaching out to me, folks that are, startup founders, co-founders, etc., and they'll talk about their idea. Okay. And you probably come across this to a degree and you can share your experience. But I find guys that are inexperienced and they put a tremendous amount of stock in their idea. And so they come to me and say, hey, I've got a co-founder. I don't want anybody to take my idea. They almost don't want, it doesn't seem like they want to launch the business because they're so in love with their stupid idea. I don't mean that in a negative way, right? I mean that half jokingly. I think a
Yeah.
lot of folks are out there and like, hey, I got this idea. I don't want anybody to know about it. Like, will you sign an NDA? I'm like, are you out of your mind? What is wrong with you? Ideas are a dime a dozen. The only thing that matters is the execution, right? And I'm speaking in general terms, right? And so I get very turned off by just the talk of ideas overall. Unless there's something that is you're ready to execute, that you've actually started on, that you've proven out, that you've got some revenue coming. So now that said, I wholeheartedly believe in the protection of intellectual property. My question is a little bit more nuanced. At what point should someone engage you?
Mhm.
Tariq, yo, I've got this pipe dream that I want to do. I need you to get me a patent on it. And it's just like, okay, let's start work. Or how do you answer that?
So I would say that that's a very good question. That's very common, actually. Like I remember being at a patent office for one of their invention conferences, InventCon, and one of the inventors there, he's like, I have a patent, I'm having these issues, but I'll be so excited when I get the patent. So I asked him, well, what do you want to do with it? I just want to frame it on my wall. I said, so you have 25, 30 plus $1,000 to spend to hang it on your wall. What's the value? What's the purpose? I honestly proud that I have that in my family and know that I have it. That's not the purpose of intellectual property protection. Like, these things are part of the Department of Commerce. It's supposed to be some commercial value, some added benefit. So if Sergey and Larry stopped at an idea and said, sign my NDA, I don't want you to touch it, that we wouldn't have Google, we wouldn't have Android. That's like, so there has to be a healthy, a realistic understanding of when it's time to execute. So the way I look at it is this. So we have different ways to engage. Everybody doesn't need a patent, number one. No matter how good your idea is, it may not even be something that qualifies to be patented. So we just have to, you need to know where you stand. I think, and there's certain things, you need to know what your business is. You need to evaluate, what are you, a content creator? Are you building a brand? Do you actually have an invention that needs to be patented? Like, what, or you just, have a good business model, you're in the right kind of business, the right people, you're looking to secure your kind of framework of your business. What are things you can do to protect your competitive advantage? But you have to actually have something. And if you don't have customers, you need to be able to demonstrate, need. Is there a market? You should have focus groups, you should test it out. I mean, before you have a name, website, anything, go to the Secretary of State to file anything, you need to prove that it's of value. Somebody wants what you're doing. Somebody cares about it. And so I think, don't fall so in love with the idea that you forget to execute. And execute doesn't mean I have to build a prototype. I need to launch a whole thing before I get started, but you need to prove there's a need in the market. You need to prove that this is a problem that needs to be solved. It might not be being solved because nobody cares about it. And so there are different levels of engagement. I think, for those that are ready, those are sophisticated business owners, entrepreneurs, founders that have reached a level where they have proven market share, they have an MVP, they're learning, they have an idea of what their competitive advantage is, what their actual their secret sauce that they need to protect is, you might need a patent. We might need to talk about that. And that's a level of engagement. If you are a serial founder, or you're a accelerator, or you're a university, or you're a corporation that you're investing in building out your intellectual property portfolio, and you know how to execute, you're not worried about the team and those things, you have ideas and you're ready at the early stage, you proved your market, you're just looking to execute, you have a plan, a strategy, then we can engage on that level. For most people, I think a level to engage, and what we kind of discovered is come in and just get an understanding of what the heck it is. And so for that, we have developed something called an IP Mastery Challenge. This is something that we do each month. It's a 5-day challenge. We give you 5 hours of your time. We give you everything you need to understand what type of information you have to identify your intellectual property assets. We don't expect you to be a patent attorney, a patent agent, or a lawyer, or know all that stuff. But what you need to be able to do is articulate and understand, what do I have? What are my IP assets? You have to have a mindset. So these are things that we go through. We have a 5-day intellectual property mastery challenge. Again, the website is ipmasterychallenge.com. What we go through is we show you how to secure your business. To give you the 5 things we're trying to teach. We're trying to teach you 5 principles of intellectual property that are universal. One is to have an IP asset mindset. Google never happens. And I could go through a ton of stories to talk about Clubhouse, how Clubhouse was a great app. They raised a lot of money, but they didn't have an IP strategy. The proof of the pudding is when they released their announcement for all the funding they had, they got sued by a company called Clubhouse that had an app on the App Store. Now, it's a totally different community. It was for the Major League Baseball, people that worked in front office. We know their locker room was called a clubhouse, but it was existing. They had trademark. They had to settle. So they didn't have patent protection. They didn't file any patents. So now you see Twitter Spaces, you see LinkedIn Audio, you see all these other established social media apps utilizing the same type of user interface, the same type of technology that powers Clubhouse, because Clubhouse didn't have an IP strategy. So they're pivoting, they're figuring out how to still make it and survive and carve out a market share, but they would have a much more powerful market share if they were able to secure their position.
Can I tell you something? I love that you brought up the Clubhouse example. I remember when they launched and everyone was humble bragging about how they got a Clubhouse invite. They're already on. It was like this big deal to be on Clubhouse for, I think, a fair amount of time, at least a few months. They built so much buzz. And so from my marketing mind was like, man, these guys raised a bunch of money. They've got great credentials. The co-founders, there were 4 co-founders. They did really well. I think it also came out of Stanford. I don't remember. And then when we finally got on Clubhouse, it was exciting in the beginning. And then they had a couple of challenges. First off, they had these groups on Clubhouse, but the time was not on your own time. It was like people were scheduling things on Clubhouse and you had to show up to the Clubhouse at that time. And that was one of their downfalls. And I know they're still around and they're still trying to find their voice and niche and other things. But do you think the linchpin of their lack of meeting the hype that was built around them was due to the fact that they didn't have a solid IP strategy, and then all the other platforms just offered a Clubhouse-like services for those that wanted that functionality?
So I don't want to pin all of their challenges on IP, but I think there's a saying that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So they were very adept at raising money. They knew the right people. They knew the right funding sources. They had the right reputation. And I think sometimes that gives a sense of overconfidence. And this is not to say anything bad about the Valley, but the Valley breeds a certain type of, I don't want to say arrogance, but I say a sense of being untouchable. If you can make it through Y Combinator, you have the right people in the right places, then you're going to be untouchable. But so that they look kind of thumb their nose at IP, but all the companies have hundreds and hundreds of patents. Airbnb has patents. I mean, all these companies have patents to protect when it matters. They don't really invest in patents early. And so I think that was their downfall. They raised a $4 billion, raised money on a $4 billion valuation on a cap table, and they had that big press announcement. And then within days, a press announcement of how did a $4 billion company or company value that projected at $4 billion not have a trademark? Trademark costs less than $5,000. So that begs the question, what other strategies? How do you not file a patent? Whether or not you can get a patent order or not, why not have the protection in place to preserve, like a social media app, you're competing with juggernauts at the time, Facebook, now Meta, Instagram, Twitter, at that time, Snapchat, all these other platforms are well established with a user base that's more sizable, even with all the fanfare. Clubhouse couldn't come near it. And they got an artificial boost, I think, from COVID, where people were inside, and to have an audio app where I can have conversations instead of, like Snap, you could have a video, but, Instagram had lives, but to actually have audio conversations. And then they had a lot of, celebrity influencer participation early. So you could have an audio conversation or participate in an audio conversation by overhearing and listening to famous celebrities on Clubhouse. When COVID was over, the intense period of lockdown was over, these other social media companies had adapted and adopted similar ways to do that same technology, get that same experience, and they already had an established user base. So there are a lot of things I think that contributed to it, but if you can see, the one thing I think that contributed to it greatly was not having a sound IP strategy. Now they're still around, they didn't go out of business, but I don't think they have met the hype that they originally had. And I think not having an IP strategy is something it's not valued like it should be. I think sometimes we think ideas are a dime a dozen, but if you are serious about it, you have planned execution, you're going to move forward with it, you owe it to yourself to at least go through the process to evaluate IP assets. Again, this is why we do our IP Mastery Challenge, IPMasteryChallenge.com. That's something we do each month, and it's something that's affordable. It's like $97. Like, that's it. You can come out of there, at least do I need a patent? Do I need a trademark? Do I need a copyright? What's best for where I am? Maybe this stuff is covered already. Maybe if you go to a good accelerator, they go through this. I work with a lot of accelerators in Maryland, DC, Techstar, Startup Grind, Upsurge, all these different groups. And we're able to work with their founders and go through these processes where we can give them sound IP guidance through that accelerator program. But so to answer your question, no, I don't think it's solely on IP, but I think that was a big gap in their initial strategy.
Understood, and completely valid reasoning behind that. When you hear about organizations that exist for the purposes of acquiring patents, and then finding violations of someone not being allowed to use that patent or building something similar, whether it's a business process or whatever. And these companies, I don't know whether you can call them companies, they exist basically to go out. How they make their money is going around suing people for patent violations. What do you think of that process? Does that help or hinder technology? Does that help or hinder the spirit of innovation?
So I think that's, we see that highlighted, and I guess definitely from your position, from what you've done in business, how that's one side of a coin. So like I said, we look at, when you're dealing with intellectual property, having a mindset to value your idea, okay, that's where you start. That's great. But then you have to then take the steps and execute on actually putting your ideas in the right legal structure to protect them. So whether it's a copyright, a trademark, a patent, whether you have contracts to protect you, NDAs, non-competes, trade secrets, whether you have policies in your business that make sure you protect who has ownership. So that's the second thing. What you're talking about, we get into, once I have those rights, I put them in the legal structure, I secure them, you have to enforce and defend.
Okay.
So enforcement and defense is part of how you execute your rights. Prime example, so we saw Apple was in the news for the Apple Watch. They have a big suit with Masimo, which is they deal with heart rate monitors, a medical technology company. they have a watch that has sensors for blood oxygen levels, things like that. And so they've been in a legal battle for several years. And so Masimo has all these patents on this technology before Apple Watch. The technology because it's a medical company, that if you have a medical condition, you need to check your blood oxygen levels, your blood pressure, all these things. You can do that from your watch. And so the engineers developed this technology, filed patents. And what is alleged by Masimo is that Apple, instead of doing the next phase, which is called commercialization, you have to have a way to commercialize your IP. How you're going to make money? You're going to sell it. What usually happens with big companies is they license it. So you deal with acquiring technology or license to technology that you didn't develop, but you get it for a price and you can incorporate it with your technology and use it. That's the way to do it. Well, Masimo alleges that Apple just bought the employees. We're not going to offer you any money. We're going to buy your CTO, offer him $4 million and buy the other engineers and hire them and immediately file a whole bunch of patents on the same technology that you just developed. We're going to do it and do it for Apple. And we have deep pockets. We dare you to do something about it. So the CEO was pissed, to say it politely. He immediately started suing Apple. Now, he can only do this because he has patents. He has, these protections. And so he's able to enforce his IP. So then Apple's fighting, because Apple has deep pockets. Apple is fighting to try to invalidate the patents that he has. And so there's back and forth. Some things are invalidated, some things are reinstated. So there's a win, loss, win, loss. So what most recently happened is the Masimo lost at the patent office trial and appeal board. They appealed to the federal circuit and they won. And so by winning, there was an injunction on Apple to stop importing these watches with these features. And this injunction was, the ruling came out in September, and they had, I want to say, a 60-day period. And so before Christmas, right before Christmas, it's supposed to go into effect. And so Apple scrambling. Now, this is a good negotiation leverage to be able to a good actor would say, hey, so let's go back over here. Sorry, let's make it good. We don't want to miss our biggest sale period. Let's negotiate. We'll pay you guys. Apple appealed and got a stay. So they appealed at the last minute, got a stay. So they were able to still sell the Apple Watch. And it's going to be reviewed again, at the end of this month.
There was like 3 or 4 days, or maybe longer, where the Apple Watch was not able to be sold. It was all over the news.
Right. So that was supposed to happen. So Apple had to pull it from their website and pull it from their stores. And if the injunction prevents imports, because it's a U.S. patent dispute, so you can't import these products into the U.S. if it's been violating patents. And so Apple appealed that ruling. So at the end of the day, Apple, for whatever few days they weren't able to sell it, they were able to still continue sales. That part didn't make the same headlines as the first part. But what I'm saying is so on one side, you have, these are just the legal rights that you have when you have IP protections. And you can make, Apple pause on their biggest season because you have your patent win. The other side is that you have people that are just investors. Some people kindly call them patent trolls, but they're investors. They buy patents. They buy portfolios, maybe from, just buy them up. They're not the original inventors. They're not even technology companies, but they buy these IP assets for the sole purpose. Their business model is buy as many assets as you can. Then we're going to, put AI to work and sniff and see who's infringing and sue as many people as we can to make as much money as we can. And
there is a company, patent troll, whatever you want to call them, that does this to the tune of nearly $1 billion a year. Wow. They own a trove of patents throughout the world on a variety of different things. And I don't know how much of what they do is benefiting society in any way. Maybe it doesn't matter to them. Clearly, for some people, they don't operate with that type of a code or compass. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just very, very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. And so nevertheless, it doesn't minimize or detract from the importance of, number one, understanding the benefit of a patent, understanding why you should consider getting one, understanding in what circumstances should you even begin to explore what it takes and whether it's a viable solution for whatever an entrepreneur is thinking about or going through or exploring. Who's your ideal audience? Now, when you've got clients from around the country, how do you get them? Is it mostly referral? Who do you enjoy talking to? Who do you not want to have reach out to you?
So I would say my ideal customer is, I like established companies or startups that have, received money. They're beyond just the initial idea phase. I would say that's probably where we can do the most, be the most beneficial for you when it comes to patents. I think also like companies that are, if you're maybe you want to optimize your IP portfolio, maybe a business unit, a Fortune 500 company that's looking to optimize in a certain technology area. You want to optimize your IP. Maybe you need to have some. So that will say, well, that's one side of it. Then the other side, what I really do enjoy is education. So one of the things that we've really learned is you have to empower people through idea ownership. And you do that by letting them know the power of an idea. And so what we do a lot with a lot of accelerators and even some community events, entrepreneurial events, we teach about intellectual property. We tell a lot of stories like the ones we said here about Google, Clubhouse, Apple, and many other stories about the power of IP. And we do this for the purpose to share how IP is an asset. And you can, it's not just having a patent, but sometimes, like if you think about it, we see it all the time. We just don't necessarily associate it with IP, but when you're a singer or an artist, that song, those lyrics, those melodies, all of that, is copywritten. And then you can, that copyright lives, your lifetime plus 70 years. And so you can leave that legacy to your family. We just saw recently Disney, Mickey Mouse now is public domain.
Public domain.
Steamboat Willie was the first cartoon, for Mickey Mouse. And so Disney owns that copyright. And, we just reached, in fact, Disney lobbied because 70 years was up 25 years ago, and they lobbied to add for certain categories of IP to extend the copyright to 90 years. And so, now Steamboat Willie is public domain. And there's a company actually that has an innovative game, not my favorite, it's a first-person shooter with Mickey Mouse, with Tommy guns and grenades and all kind of stuff. But that's what can happen. You have to have a strategy. When that happens, Disney has to pivot to other versions of the character, or maybe they come up with a new character. I don't know. But you have to be able to understand your IP and the value of it. Even companies like, we've all played Angry Birds. Well, Rovio, they came up with this concept, and they're good at the game technology, but they have patents, they have copyrights, they have trademarks, and they're able to, they stick with the game. They're in the gaming business. But we've seen Angry Bird movies. We've seen, merchandise. We've seen floats in the Thanksgiving Days parade. All of these things happen, and they're making a commercial benefit because they've had an IP strategy that is not just about the app, but we own that brand. We own Angry Birds. We own that concept. We own that artistry. And so we'll license it to a film company to make a movie. So the film company's going to invest to make the movie. They're going to pay Rovio, the game company. So now they're making movies. They're not making them. They're licensing their intellectual property to a film company. They're licensing their artistry, their imagery, their copyrights and trademarks to a toy company to sell toys. And so this is when you have an IP strategy, you can commercialize it in a variety of different ways. The last story I'll say about that is IBM. IBM is known as the computer company. IBM has invested in so many patents. They had their own database at the patent office. They have had a series of years where they just invest by hiring everybody that will help them draft patent applications and file them, and encouraging every engineer that has an idea to fill out an invention disclosure and file it. And they amass this IP. What do they do with it? They sell it. They license it to everyone. So all these other companies, a lot of AI, all these NVIDIA, Amazon technology that's happening right now, they're licensing tons of IBM technology because they own the space. And so it can be an asset, like just like a stock or anything else. If you're investing in the IP in the space, you can leverage that technology. You don't have to utilize it yourself, but you can own the IP in a space and leverage it as a model. So there's a lot of things you can do with it. Again, we get into all of this in our IP Mastery Challenge, and we do that to teach you how to take your idea or just evaluate where you are. What is your IP asset mindset? Do you have IP assets? How do you secure your business? How do you secure, your content or your brand, your innovations? And how can you use those to leverage them to make money? We go through those in detail and give it to you in a way. And so our next one is starting the 22nd of this month, January. And we also have another way to kind of continue that conversation. We have what's called Patent Insider Academy. And that goes into, that's includes the challenges, but also more of a coaching where we get into, okay, I want to do a trademark. How do I do a trademark search? We'll show you how. How do you search for a patent? How do I know that my idea is patentable? Can I get a patent on it? Instead of going to law school to figure that out or work for the patent office like I did, we'll show you how to do that. If you want to understand, evaluate your business, like let's look at what are my IP assets? What tools do I need to secure my business? How can I commercialize? What do I need to put in place for enforcement or defense? Like, did you know you could buy? Did you know there was a such thing called litigation insurance? You can pay for insurance to cover if you get sued for your IP. So then you don't have to pay the millions of dollars to attorneys. You can pay a premium and a deductible and have your legal fees covered. So there are strategies that you can put in place to protect yourself before something happens. And that's really the best time.
So I think the key takeaway here for anyone listening is if you have an idea, whether you're a technologist or it's around a business process or it's a trademark or other things, the patent process is something that can be complex if you don't know what you're doing. It can be confusing. It can be overwhelming. So it pays dividends to speak with somebody like you or somebody on your team to understand the fundamentals of, hey, do I have something here? If so, what should I do? What is the cost? And I think that the Patent Mastery Challenge is a brilliant idea for anyone who is starting a business based on some sort of intellectual property. I could literally talk to you all day. You are a wealth of information. We've only got a few more minutes, so I wanted to ask a few rapid fire questions.
Okay, sure.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? I mean, maybe my brain is wired a little differently than most people, but I really think, like, I see things like the Clubhouse thing, and I'm like, wow, they raised $4 billion on a $4 billion capital when they didn't get their trademark, they didn't file any patents. And like that, those are like nightmares, because I see where other people see opportunities or different things. I see IP disasters. I'm looking for that. So that I make sure did I make sure I filed my stuff? Like I have a trademark. So I don't know if you can see this on the wall there. A trademark on Patent Insider. I was like, I need to make sure I trademark these other things that we're doing and make sure that we protect our brand. I think about those things. Like that's part of what keeps me up at night. I think knowing that you can do something about it. Most times you're going to have to pay a hefty price to a law firm, to an attorney, hourly rate, build it every 15 minutes interval to learn what you need to know. And I wouldn't, there's a lot of people saying stuff on YouTube and social media that's just not true when it comes to IP. The NFT is not going to protect your intellectual property. Blockchain is not going to protect your intellectual property. It's not replacing patents and copyrights and trademarks, at least not at this time. So, but there's that misinformation everywhere. So that's why I think the way I do. So I'm looking at what's the best way to give accurate information and make it accessible. That's why we have the IP Mastery Challenge. And that's why we do what we do. So that's those kind of things keep me up at night. Also, I'm very happy to be in an environment that, out of COVID, that we're now able to kind of come outside and embrace human relationships in terms of business, professionally and personally, just to be out and about with people. So I like going outside, being in nature, being on hikes, and just really helping people solve problems.
So on that note, how do you incorporate purpose into your work?
I think we talked about it before. Faith is a big part of my life. I don't think that we're just here on earth just to pay bills and accumulate paychecks, self-promote on social media, take as many selfies as we can. Although I have nothing against taking pictures. I have a number of pictures. I love taking pictures with family pictures. But I think what I'm saying is that what my purpose is to see how can I help. I think I'm here for a bigger reason than just to work and pay bills or just to go through life in a mundane way. So I'm looking for purpose. My purpose is helping others. And so I look at what I've been blessed with knowledge, information, experience that I have, and how best I can help serve others. And I do that in this capacity as the owner of Patent Insider. We empower others through idea ownership. We show you how to take one of your most valuable assets. Because I think ideas are gifts. I don't think they're a diamond as they come to us. I don't think they're actually originally ours. I think we're maybe on a frequency, or we're getting them downloaded. They're blessings, whatever you want to call them, answers to prayers. I had someone in one of my classes said, we pray to God, we pray for, or wish that we get $1 million or $1 billion, whatever it is, and then we get these wonderful ideas and we do nothing with them. So maybe the point is to act on these things. So I think about ideas like that ideas are answers to prayers or blessings or answers to our wishes, whatever we want to call it, and that we have the opportunity to do great things. All of the things that have changed lives, from the medical technology, from the Zoom that we're using around, the cameras, the microphones, the lighting, the tools that we use today are all ideas. At some point, they didn't exist. So I think our ideas, we're looking for how to solve the problems of the humanity for the future. And I think an idea is they're in the people, the minds of the people around us. And so my purpose is to help you secure that intellectual property, own your idea, and empower you to execute and create something meaningful.
Beautifully said. What is in store for Patent Insider for the rest of 2024? What are your goals?
So 2024, we are really focused on growing our brand with the IP Mastery Challenge.
Okay.
We're also looking at growing our community on Patent Insider Academy and continuing to serve those, working with accelerators and incubators, established companies, and then on the education side, working with various Fortune 500 companies and their business units to train or educate to optimize their IP portfolio generation. So
amazing.
That's our focus, I think.
So if somebody wants to look you up or find out more about the Mastery Challenge, where can they go? And tell me a little bit more about the community that you're just referenced.
So I would say, so you can look us up online, www.ipmasterychallenge.com, ipmasterychallenge.com, and that tells you everything about the challenge, and they get the dates on there when it's coming up and how to register. You can also look us up, Patent Insider, www.patentinsider.co, Patent Insider on all the social media handles, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything will pretty much Patent Insider. As far as the community, so that we have launched Patent Insider Academy, and if you go to our website, you'll see the links and things like for that. But that's a community where it's not just a 1-week challenge, but we have how to use your intellectual property to raise money, how to use your intellectual property to make money, how to take your ideas, you want to design a prototype, what type of mindset that you need to have as a business owner to be resilient, to make it through. We have, we talk about how NDAs and trademarks, we talk about contracts, talk about commercialization strategies with the government, commercialization strategies for independent business owners, how to raise money in VC, how to raise money, I think, on crypto. These are the different categories of kind of courses that are on there. And the other courses that we have on there developing are the how to, kind of DIY. A lot of people want to do it themselves. So how to do a trademark search, how to do a patent search. For those that really have interest, we have some options for doing some DIY patent stuff. But for the most part, once you do the research, we always encourage you to hire a professional. You have a diminished value or diminished return in doing that kind of work yourself. It's not going to protect you if you're just copying and pasting a white paper into a patent application.
Oh
If you're
my gosh.
filling out your own trademark application and wondering why it's not working, it's just not, that's not smart. So we'll teach you some DIY stuff to a point. But that's patentinsider.co for the challenge, IP Mastery Challenge. Again, you want to get in. We're starting 22nd, so you can get this. But if you check each month, we'll have these challenges. IPMasteryChallenge.com, patentinsider.co, and you can find the links to Patent Insider Academy as well in there.
Got it. One last question. You're a Roosterly client. You're one of 2,800 individual business owners that utilize Roosterly to power their social media. What do you like about Roosterly? Why are you a client?
It is, so I gotta tell you the story about how I got started. I've hired so many different types of marketing people. I've had a marketing agency, had college interns, good college interns, had our college interns. I've had freelance services, and to find consistent quality, dependable, repeatable on a schedule, the quality of content is going to be a certain level. The best that I've found is working, the best experience I've had is working with Roosterly, and it's just relieved a lot of headache, hiring these various different types of people and spending lots of money and getting just no return on the results in terms of the consistency, the quality, the expectation. And I think that staff, the process, it's very, very refreshing, very simple in terms of if you know what you want, you can get what you need.
Beautifully said. I like and love all of our clients, but I especially enjoy when we get clients that are as sophisticated as you. You do something very unique, clearly very valuable to folks. And anytime we have the opportunity to support smart entrepreneurs that are building unique value-driven businesses, it just means a lot to us, to Roosterly as a team. And I know the folks that are working, the social media managers and program managers and account managers that are working to support your social media. It means a lot to them to be able to power it and work creatively to get your message out there. So Tariq, thank you so much. It's always enlightening, and I always come away from every conversation that I have the opportunity to have with you as valuable. Hopefully this is not our last podcast, and we'll get to have more conversations, because I do certainly think that between your ears, you've got so much knowledge that needs to get out there. So thank your parents on my behalf for raising such a bright kid.
Thank you.
All right, man.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. It's an honor, pleasure, and we hope that this is valuable information for your listeners. And again, if you want to hear more like what this came from, join the IP Mastery Challenge. Join us on Patent Insider Academy. We hope that we give you something valuable that can help you secure your idea, turn your ideas into assets that pay you forever. And
all right, guys, you heard it here first. Tariq, have a good rest of your day. Everyone, go check out IP Mastery Challenge. I will talk to you guys later.